Hey there everyone, Mazrock here, and welcome to the Beginner's Guide to Brewmaster for Dragonflight. I did do a version of this for Shadowlands, but with the new talent systems, a lot of things have changed. So today I'm going to be talking defensives, rotations. I'm going to give you guys a starter talent build and talk about where some of the flex points can go and some of the consumables that you should be using and kind of how to play Brewmaster, because it is definitely one of the more complex tanks that you can play out of all six spanks. I almost said out of all six spanks. Holy jeez. Out of all six tanks. So, couple things that we definitely have to talk about, and there is a lot of power behind Brewmaster for self-sustain healing, as well as just DPS output. I've been very shocked at how much damage I've been able to do as Brewmaster at the lower item levels that I was. Even then, I'm still not where I want to be, but there is definitely a lot of room for a lot of damage for Brewmaster. Before we do get started, though, please do like, comment, subscribe, all that fun stuff. It goes such a long way to helping out the channel. There's a Discord link down below if you have any Brewmaster questions at all. If you come watch me stream, there's a Twitch link down below if you want to see tank keys pretty much every stream on all six tanks. Come on by, have some fun. The Pug World has definitely been fun lately. As well as there is, I can't do this without my patrons. Thank you to all of my patrons. This is actually going to be a slightly early access video for patrons, so if you want access to some content quicker than most, my patron becoming a patron is probably one of the best ways to do that. Alright, so let's get into it. So first, we have to start talking Brewmaster defensives. Now, with Dragonflight, Brewmaster did get a lot more defensives than we had before in terms of survivability. So we do have access to Diffuse Magic now, which is a 1.5 minute cooldown, which reduces the damage you take by 60% for 6 seconds, and it transfers all currently active harmful effects, magical effects on you, back onto their original caster if possible. This is actually a very powerful ability when you learn how to use it right, and it does require dungeon knowledge, raid knowledge to know when to use right. So this isn't something you want to be super proactive with, but you want to know when you want to be reactive with. When something is going to put something on you, you can deal a lot of damage back to the caster with Diffuse Magic. We now have access to Dampen Harm very easily, which is a 20 to 50% damage reduction for 10 seconds based on how hard you're going to get hit. The harder hits being 50% and the minor hits being 20% and anywhere in between, right? So there is a variability there. Zen Meditation is back, which reduces all damage taken by 60% for 8 seconds on a 5-minute cooldown. Being hit by a melee attack or taking another action will cancel this effect. Timing on this one can be very, very weird because you don't want to get hit by a melee attack right when you're about to use it. So large mobs, large pulls, not the best time, but big boss hits when they're doing a castable ability. For example, Herja in Halls of Valor. She does nothing. She doesn't melee you while she's charging the Blast of Light, and you can use this to mitigate that damage. Of course, we have Fortified Brew coming back as well. Turn your skin into stone for 15 seconds and increasing your maximum health by 15%, reducing all damage you take by 20%, and increasing your armor and dodge by 25% each. And there are different ways that you can work this around within your kit. You can kind of get a 2-minute cooldown on that to go from 6 to 4 minutes. As well, you can go with Iron Shell Brew, which increases your armor by an extra 25% and your dodge by an extra 50%. This is purely personal. I've been running Iron Shell Brew just to have it be a bigger defensive, but you can easily go with Expeditious Fortification if you want. And then there's also the talent point if you so choose, although I have opted out of it, which is Fortifying Brew increases Stagger effectiveness by 15%, which combines with other Fortifying Brew effects. So 3 points total to increase your Fortifying Brew stuff, right? But there are ways to reduce the cooldown of this, which we will get into later. And lastly, Celestial Brew. Now, this is one of your main defensives on a very short cooldown. Now, with Light Brewing over here, you were going to gain a big Absorb Shield based on the amount of damage that you have staggered. So, let's talk about Stagger. Stagger is your active form of mitigation. When you get hit, a portion of that damage, physical damage, and a smaller portion of the magical damage is going to create a dot on you, a damage over time dot, which you can manage with Purifying Brew. Purifying Brew clears 50% of that dot and increases the absorption of your next Celestial Brew up to 200% based on your current level of Stagger. And right now, so that's with this improved Celestial Brew here, but we also have Guy Plin's Imperial Brew, which instantly heals you for 25% of the purified Stagger damage. So don't think you're getting the other two things of this just by clicking this one talent point. There are other things in here that go from there. Now, when it comes to Brewmaster, Stagger management is quite literally the most important part of your job. You don't want to be spamming Purifying Brews. You want to be able to manage that dot properly. And a good Brewmaster will be able to keep around the... So there's 3 levels of Stagger. There's green, yellow, and red, of course. Red being the highest level of Stagger, and green being the smallest level of Stagger. A good Brewmaster is going to be able to keep themselves between yellow and red because there's certain ramp-up effects that they get for higher levels of Stagger, which we're going to talk about in the damage portion and things like that of this video. But managing Stagger is very, very important, so that way as you learn to manage it, you're going to be able to get really big Celestial Brew absorbs, which is going to come in handy as big mitigation. You're going to get more haste with this high tolerance talent, which will give you up to 10% more haste, which is why Brewmasters really don't care about haste. You have a decent form of getting it, but also there's other nuances with that, but that's not beginner level kind of worry, right? Just for Brewmaster, don't worry about haste that much. Get your versatility and your crit and your mastery after that to where you want it to be, and you can kind of just ignore pretty much most haste. So with defensives, like I said, managing Stagger is very, very important, and that's something that you are absolutely going to need to master to play this spec to its full efficacy and really get it right. There are things that you can do to improve that Stagger. So base Stagger lasts for 10 seconds. With this talent, I opt for Bob and Weave, which adds an extra 3 seconds onto that dot. It doesn't sound like much, but staggering damage over 13 seconds versus 10 very much makes a big play, especially while you're learning how to play and be more comfortable within the Brewmaster skin, right? With all of these changes, this has been the hardest tank for me to adapt because I went from a really strong version of Brewmaster when I learned it with Keg of the Heavens and Shadowlands, which Keg Smash healed you for a bunch. That's not around anymore. So managing Stagger became a lot more important, but the new talents also changed a lot of stuff around. You do have very high self-sustain in a lot of different ways. So Gift of the Ox and Spirit of the Ox makes it so when you take damage, or when you use Rising Sun Kick and Blackout Kick, have a chance to summon a Healing Sphere. A Healing Sphere is only visible to you and will heal you for, now for me it's 21,000, but there is different bases for this, but not important here. So that is one form of healing that you have. You also have Quick Sit. Purify 5% of your staggered damage each time you gain Shuffle. You gain 3 seconds of shuffle duration. We'll talk about shuffle passives in a short little bit here. Guy Plin's Brew, like I said. Purifying Brew instantly heals you for 25% of the purified stagger damage. This is not a small amount, especially when you learn how to redline and have that dot at an increased capability. 25% of a big dot is a lot of healing, but one of your main forms of self-sustain is actually going to be Expel Harm. And going down the tree here, we have a couple of Expel Harm talents that are pretty much mandatory for any sort of keys. So we have Expel Harm's healing is increased by 5%, and Critically Strike chance increased by 15%. Now this is very important, and we'll talk about that in a short little bit. Expel Harm's critical healing is increased by 50%. Also very important for the same reasons up there, but as well, Expel Harm's healing is increased up to 100% based on your missing health. So honestly, with a couple of stacks of Purified Chi, and how you gain Purified Chi is actually by stagger management. So every time that you So every time that you swap a level, you go down a level of a stagger. So you go from yellow to red, you'll get you'll get a stack of purified chi. There's other ways to get it. We'll talk about that later. So with that, it's going to make these a lot harder. They're going to hit a lot, but add Celestial Fortune, which is a Brewmaster passive. When you have a chance equal to your critical strike chance to be healed for an additional amount, an additional 65% of the amount healed. So let's say Expel Harm is going to heal you for 100 health points, right? Let's just keep the math simple here. Based on your critical strike chance of Expel Harm, which you are increasing, you'll gain 165 instead of just the 100. Now, this is obviously, we're talking thousands of health, not 100, so keeping the math simple, right? So this is very, very important, and when we're talking, my details meters for the Valentine's Day dungeon, so they're completely off. This is going to be one of your top 3 healing abilities, and is absolutely huge. Shuffle. So, Niaozo's teaching, I never know how to pronounce that right, Niaoz, that's it, allows you to shuffle during combat, increasing the effectiveness of your stagger by 100%. Shuffle is granted by attacking enemies with Keg Smash, Blackout Kick, and Spinning Crane Kick. So it's very important to always be using those abilities whenever you can. Keg Smash, Blackout Kick, Spinning Crane Kick are 3 of your most used abilities, so it's really not too much to worry about, but I have seen myself get into a flow where I don't hit Spinning Crane Kick as much as I want to, and that is something that you absolutely have to be working through. Brewmaster does have a rotation that you kind of want to go through and kind of get right, and when you get into the flow of it, it works really, really well. And then, of course, we have Spirit of the Ox, like we have said there, Stagger, which is a portion of your physical damage that is based on your agility, by the way, and magical damage is 45% of that stagger damage. Lots of stuff to kind of be going through over here, but that is kind of the defensive portion of this, and I know I've already talked for a lot. Brewmaster has a lot going for it defensively, but managing that stagger, I cannot tell you enough how important that is. Now, when it comes to offensive abilities, Keg Smash is one of your most important ones. It is going to be your highest damage dealing ability in... it's going to be your highest damaging ability in keys. Guaranteed. It's very, very important to prioritize Keg Smash whenever you can, and with this build you're going to get Storm Stout's Last Keg, which is going to give you an additional charge of Keg Smash. The additional damage is great, but the additional charge is where it's at, because this is on a cooldown, right? 7.6 seconds for me currently, but this does vary based on different factors. With this build here, we opted for Dragonfire's Brew. So after you use Breath of Fire, you breathe fire 2 additional times, dealing more fire damage, and Breath of Fire damage is increased by 100% based on your level of stagger. So as you learn to manage your stagger into that high yellow, low red line, you're going to just be dealing a lot more Breath of Fire damage, and in AoE pulls, this is noticeable. But we also combine this with Sal Salabin's strengths. When you use Keg Smash, the remaining cooldown of Breath of Fire is reset. So lots of Breath of Fire damage, along with a lot of good things, right? Now we combine this with a Blackout combo. So Blackout Kick also empowers your next ability, depending on whichever one it is. Tiger Palm is 100% increased damage. Tiger Palm is a single target ability and something you're normally going to be pressing too much, aside from, solo tyrannical bosses and things like that. Breath of Fire, the periodic damage is increased by 50%, and the damage reduction is increased by 5%, because Breath of Fire does put a debuff on them that reduce damage to you for 12 seconds. So that is going to be a 10% DR just for doing your rotation properly. But Keg Smash, and this is the important one here, reduces the remaining cooldown of your brews by 2 additional seconds. Totally combined, this is going to be a 5-second cooldown on all of your brews. This is Fortifying Brew, Bone Dust Brew, Purifying Brew. These are all of the big brews that you really like to have, as well as Celestial Brew. So right now, this is a 30-second cooldown with Light Brewing, which reduces the cooldown of Purifying Brew and Celestial Brew by 20%. This is going to very easily get down to the 15 to 20-second range when you are using your rotation properly. So the way that I have been doing it has been Blackout Kick into Keg Smash, into Breath of Fire, which is reset, so you will always have a Breath of Fire after you Keg Smash, and Spinning Crane Kick. And working through that rotation is very, very well, but that's not it, because Brewmaster has a lot more buttons. You also have access to Rising Sun Kick, which is a powerful single target ability, but will also give you healing spheres, and Rushing Jade Wind. Now, if you are finding the button bloat to be a little much with Brewmaster, which is very possible, opt for special delivery here until you feel comfortable with all of the abilities that you're trying to weave in and go. So the way that I've been working it with Rushing Jade Wind and Rising Sun Kick has been Blackout Kick, Keg Smash. Now this is once you're already into your rotation, pretty much always open with a Keg Smash. But once you're into you've got the thick of things in it. Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, Breath of Fire, Spinning Crane Kick, and then I will do Rising Sun Kick or Rushing Jade Wind to upkeep it, and then kind of go back into a Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, Breath of Fire, Spinning Crane Kick, then Rising Sun Kick, and kind of weaving those in to make sure that you're always rotating those properly. And with that, you're going to get a lot shorter of brews. Bone Dust Brew will be noticeably shorter. Celestial Brew is going to be very big for self-sustain and absolute crazy absorb shields for when you need it for big hits or anything else. But when you can get that down to 15 to 20 seconds, you're going to start feeling a lot more stable, especially while you're managing your Stagger with Purifying Brew. And then when you need a big heal, you're going to have Expel Harm with multiple Purified Chi stacks kind of there. And this has absolutely been, for me and my testing and my playing, 4 Purified Chi stacks on an Expel Harm is a lay on hands. My health has ping-ponged more than a blood decay, and this is something that you're going to have to kind of manage and get used to, and it's going to do so more so as you're learning to play the spec and instinctualize when you're wrong, but when you're in trouble. The healer that I was running with was a friend of mine, and he would see me go down to 20% and be like, oh crap, and start panicking, and then immediately I'm at 100% just with one global of Expel Harm, and he's like, how are you doing this? And it's learning to manage that, right? Which can be very, very difficult. You do have a number of offensive cooldowns as well, with Weapons of Order, Exploding Keg, Bone Dust Brew. You can opt out of Summon White Tiger if you want. That's really up to you. You can go with something like Bounce Back if you just don't want the button. This is very minimal damage. It's not super great. It's kind of okay. Not a big fan of Summon White Tiger, but it is free damage, so you choose what you wish. Bounce Back is been buggy and not super great for me, but I have definitely been. It hasn't been, because the way with Stagger works, getting hit for a lot isn't usually the case, but this is definitely something that you can opt into. But with my testing, I found it wasn't proccing right and things like that. I think there definitely is some bugs with that. For utility spells, you have a Ring of Peace. Don't be afraid to use it to get away from mobs. Put it behind you and roll back, and then that way all the mobs are just going to come straight forward to you and not being able to do anything. It allows you to get a reprieve. You have the Tiger Tail Sweep, which is a group stun on a very short cooldown of a minute, which is very, very powerful as well. You can stop things with Paralyze. Paralyze stops have been absolutely huge for me, especially in Dragonflight, stopping certain casts like the Severing Slash and Algathar Academy. And just a lot of good things for you to be able to use. Now, with this build, you might ask, Soothing Mist, are we using this at all? You are never using this at all unless the pull is done and you just want some little extra healing, but it deals very, very, very little. And I can't stress the amount of very little healing that it does. It's I mean, for bursting, I used it once and it was okay for like a stack of bursting, but 2-3 stacks, probably not gonna do much for you. That's just kind of how it works. But with Brewmaster, that's really, your setup is a very, very important, and we're going to go over that right after this. But that is kind of the basics for defensives and offensives that you need to know. But understand your health is going to ping pong a lot. And how much damage you do is based on your level of stagger. So learning to, like, we'll stress this. Learning to manage your stagger is very, very important, and staying at green levels of stagger is not where you want to be. Using Purifying Brew within the first 2 seconds of combat, probably not the smartest move. Right? You want to be able to ramp up and then have those Purifying Brews to constantly get down to where you want to be. A nice opener that I do is I will use Weapons of Order before I pull. Right before I pull, because you don't get the cooldown reduction from the Kyrian Soulbind ability anymore, so just straight up, you can just use it. But what I will do is I will open with a Rushing Jadewind before I'm even in the pack. You upkeep Rushing Jadewind no matter what you do. So Rushing Jadewind, and I'll use a Breath of Fire before I go in, and then immediately open with a Keg Smash, Blackout Kick, Keg Smash, and then you just have Breath of Fire going. And then you're in solid territory already. I'll put down my... and there are some times where you kind of work around there, but keeping your cooldowns aligned is where you want to be, and having the flow of where you want to be is very important. And with the tier set, you want to be using Spinning Crane Kick to be able to get your buff. Very, very important there. But it's always pretty much... get into the rotation of Blackout Kick, Keg Smash to reset Breath of Fire, do Breath of Fire, Spinning Crane Kick. And then weave in your other talents as you need. Now here, I don't need to hit Purifying Brew because these aren't hitting me, so I'm actually not... I'm not taking any damage, so there's no need to. But using Nizao, using your defensives... very, very important here, but that's kind of the balance in which you want to work things and work things out as you go on. Now, as you get a little bit deeper into the spec and you're feeling a lot more comfortable, this build is for 80% defensiveness with good offensive, but you can opt out of light brewing and go with Training of Nizao to gain up to 15% mastery based on your level of stagger. And you can go down with Facepalm and Counter Strike. So each time you dodge or an enemy misses you, your next Tiger Palm or Spinning Crane Kick damage is increased by 100%. Those are some talents that you can go and opt into and take away some defensive talents that you find that you might not be using as much. For consumables, I have been using the Buzzing Runes to increase my crit, because crit is very, very, very good for Brewmaster. So versatility and crit are two of the stats that you're going to want to focus on. I've been using just the straight up file of tepid versatility in all content because Brewmaster loves their versatility a lot. So that's something you're going to want to be focusing on. And then we'll talk about the tier set really quick here. Hitting an enemy with Tiger Palm or Spinning Crane Kick grants Brewmaster's Rhythm, increasing the damage dealt and reducing the damage taken by 1% for 15 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. Now, and for each stack of Brewmaster's Rhythm, Purifying Brew clears 3% of more of your damage delayed with Stagger. So Purifying Brew, as we go over here, 50%, it's going to be 53%. This is actually slightly noticeable and does make it easier for beginner brewmasters to really get into the rhythm of things. See what I did there? Get into the rhythm of things and kind of get the spec in play. When you learn how to do this, you are insanely tanky. Like, you really are. You're going to feel squishy as you're getting into it, which is totally fair, because you need to learn how to instinctualize the buttons, know when you're actually in trouble and when you're not, because your red line stagger bar could be massive and you're still like, nope, I'm good, I got this, I got all my Purifying Chi stacks, I got Purifying Brew up, you have a second charge of it, by the way, and you know there's another one coming, and you're like, no, we're all good, we're all good. And there's sometimes where you're like, oh, I have nothing. Do not look at this Windswept pages. I've been having trouble I've been having trouble getting trinkets for Brewmaster, and it's strictly there for item level. I know haste is not great, and this is not where you want to be, but trinkets just haven't been dropping, and there's not a lot of great Mythic Plus trinkets. I would opt for a Whetstone if I can, because I like the Mastery, and it deals good damage. And Hunger of the Pack is actually pretty not bad, because it offers a lot of critical strike, which is very, very nice. So if that's something you get at a low level, it's a really, really nice stat stick for Brewmaster. Alright, so aside from that, that is going to be the beginner's guide to brew, getting keys. Practice your rotation on dummies. Learn to instinctualize what you're doing next, because getting into the flow of that rotation is very, very important. And when you do that, you're going to be able to get a lot more of survivability and damage out of that, because Blackout combo, this is a really good one. And knowing if you want more Breath of Fire damage, if you want that additional 5% DR, Keg Smash is usually your go-to, so you get just a lot more brews throughout the dungeon. Or if you want to go with Purifying Brew, because pausing Stagger for 3 seconds can be pretty huge. Okay, that's not a small thing to do, and when you're redlining and you're just like, okay, holy crap, I need a second, right? You know the Purifying Chi stacks are coming up for a big Expel Harm, but there's 2 seconds left on the Expel Harm before you're going to be able to get it. Pausing Stagger damage for 3 seconds is a really smart play. So Blackout combo really does put the agency in your hands and your own self-sustain in your hands. You have a ton of tools to be able to work this. It's just knowing what buttons to press and when, and that's something that you're going to get the feel for as you play Brewmaster a lot more. So I really hope that this did help you guys. I have a Mythic Plus Brewmaster video coming as well, where we're going to talk a little bit more certain stuff that Brew's really good at, stuff that you want to work with, and things like that. But if this is a pretty easy talent build for you to get into and get into all forms of keys. There's not a lot that I would change, but how aggressively you play and things like that can matter a lot with a Brewmaster. So I hope you guys have fun. Thank you for watching, everyone, and happy tanking.